Hey, everybody, welcome back to View from the Top podcast, where we help growth-minded men who desire momentum in their business, their family, and their finances get through the valleys and up the mountain to their very own view from the top. I'm so glad you're listening in today. Hey, guys, this past week, I got to go on a ride along with Big A. Now, it wasn't like a, police cruiser or anything, not that kind of a ride along. Just him and his truck. And I got to ride shotgun, and we drove around his hometown, kind of where he grew up and where he lived, and story after story. I don't know how he remembers so many names, but anyway, I got to go on a ride along basically within this last week. And what stood out to me most on that 4 or 5 hour trip was his journey out of isolation and how he got to where he is today. And I think that's worth sorting through that, talking through that for all of us to listen in and learn some things for ourselves, be encouraged, and maybe get some help that we need. So let's get ready. We're going to go on this journey of getting out of isolation with Big A. Let's get him in here. Hey, Big A, you ready to get rolling today?
Wally, I'm ready to roll, buddy. It's time to go. It's game time. Let's go.
We did some rolling this week.
Oh my gosh, we had so much fun. What did you think about my selection for restaurants for lunch? Was that not top level? I mean,
oh my gosh.
I know you're going to bust me. You already busted me once.
I did. We're in Nashville. So Big A takes me on this trip, and basically a ride along around kind of, where he grew up. And we're going to get into some of that today, but as we talk through it. But anyway, we ended up going right through Nashville downtown, and he had a store location he used to own on the other side of Nashville. And so we're going right through Nashville, and he mentioned something about eating lunch at this Mexican restaurant. I'm like, cool, man. I mean, if you're from Nashville, anywhere around here,
too.
There's some cool Mexican restaurants. So we pull into this Mexican restaurant, and lo and behold, it's under renovation. So couldn't eat there. I'm like, cool, he'll pick another cool spot. We go down the road a little further, and we pull into Panera. I'm like, what? I was so let down. I was like, what?
Yeah.
No, I was kidding. The sandwich was good, man.
There was a good reason for it, though. It was good. Panera's good. It was good. But truth is, I had to go to the bathroom. It was the closest place to go. And I don't go to the bathroom at places unless we spend money. So we stayed there and ate lunch. So, you can't
that's
just
a good reason. The company was still good. The sandwich was still filling.
It was great.
And it was good. It was a good time. It was great. We had a great
time.
It
was fun, though, man. I enjoyed hanging out with you. We kind of did my journey. I've had the privilege of living in Nashville now my entire life. We're multi-generations from Nashville. And hopefully my kids and grandkids or most of my grandkids will stay here and they'll carry on this legacy. But Nashville's been fun. It's been really good to Robin and I, and we've had a great life and a great experience. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to share it with you.
Yeah, that was cool. It was cool.
Wally, let me ask you a question. I remember as a young guy, my dad talking about being a self-made man. Like he would boast about it. He would say, yes, son, you're going to go do what you want and you don't have to listen to other people and you create your pathway and you go where no one's been and create your own pathway. And he would kind of boast about that. I remember my mom and him arguing quite a bit over my dad was going to do what he wanted to do. Right. And it made me think through kind of this topic that we're discussing today, the journey out of isolation. My dad was really in isolation. My dad was a great man. I love my dad. He was my best friend, best man at my wedding. I mean, my dad was amazing.
Your dad was the best man at your wedding?
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were only what?
19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of rare.
He wanted to be sure I got to the wedding, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
It was my dad. My dad was my best friend. We fished together all the time. But here's the thing that he and I differed on was being willing to listen to some other insight. And I didn't even learn that, though, until I got a little bit older. And I was just curious, your take, how you were raised in regards to, were you taught to be a self-made man? I don't even think there is such a thing. But were you taught that? Did you have that mindset?
Both of my dads worked for the man, if you will, right? If you will, they worked in my stepdad, who I lived with my mom most of my life, all my life pretty much since I was 5, worked in a salt factory, and he worked there 40 years. He was a faithful employee and loyal, and they treated him well, and they made a decent life for themselves. But he worked for the man. Then my biological dad, who I saw pretty much every week, he worked for the State Department of Transportation there in New York, and he worked there, I think, 42 or something, a lot of years anyway.
Right.
And you don't see that much anymore. You don't see people working somewhere 40 years, but he did. Both of them did, and they weren't entrepreneurial in any way. They pretty much. I don't know. Like, I feel weird saying it, but that's like, even as a kid, like, I just felt like maybe they, I don't mean this again negative. This is, I think I love them both. And, they're been great dads and great husbands and, to their wives. But like, they accepted where they were. That's just what they knew. And they accepted that. And that's what they did. And as a kid, that was different for me. I wasn't willing to accept, what the station that I was going to, work in a salt factory the rest of my life. And, that was me in my decision. But I never felt, I don't know if it's a personality thing or what, but I've never really felt like, oh, look at me. And maybe it is, I'm going to do this and it's going to be on me. I've been a Christ follower since I was 8. And so that absolutely plays a lot into it, of how my worldview and how I look at things and how I believe, Proverbs 16:9 says, man makes his plans and God directs his steps. So if I'm self-made, if I think of myself that way, then, I have to take the last part of that verse out, and I can't do that. So I don't believe that I'm a self-made man. My mom gave me this, a quick story about my mom. So when I started the business, that I ended up selling, I started in 2003, and I remember 2005. I remember having a conversation with her. I don't know if I've told this on this podcast or not, but I remember her basically saying to me, she calls me Mike. My name's Kevin Michael, and so my family all back there still in New York still calls me Michael. Kind of weird, but anyway, she says, Michael. She said, I'm just so worried about you starting this business and doing this stuff because you don't have health insurance. Like, that was like, I love her. That was her mindset. Like, that was the biggest fear and concern that she had, and it was legitimate. Sure. Like, Mom, I said, there's other ways you can buy health insurance. Like, your employer doesn't have to give it to you.
But she wasn't used to that, right? Because for 40 years, right, they had health insurance through the company.
But she gave me this sign that's, I couldn't show it to you. I could turn my computer and show it to you, but she didn't give me a sign. She made a point of saying something to me, and then I went out and found the sign and I put it above my door. And it's above my door, and it's when I walk out my door, if I look up, I see it every time. And it says, when you get there, remember where you came from.
That's good.
Yeah. And she actually apologized years later. She says, I was wrong. I'm glad I was wrong.
Do you have health insurance, Wally?
I do, yeah. I do.
Sure that you're covered. It didn't dawn on me until you said it about your dad working at a company so many years. And it never really dawned on me until this very moment that, I've been a small business owner 44 years, never worked for anybody since I've been married. And my dad never worked for anybody his whole career. And my grandfather never worked for anybody his entire career. And I'm not sure about my great-grandfather. I would need to check into that a little bit. But I know those 3 generations never worked for anybody. And my grandfather was in the grocery business, had a couple of grocery stores. I should have took you by there yesterday. We drove right by them, and I failed to point it out. And so then my dad was a general contractor, my entire life until he died. And then, of course, I've never worked for anybody either. So I guess it's just differences in people. There's nothing right or wrong. It's just different. Yeah. But what I do want to talk about a little bit today is talking about how at one point I did kind of see the light. And I didn't early on, because early in my career, I had that mantra that my dad had kind of sported around: be your own man, don't ever be vulnerable, don't be transparent, keep it close to your vest, don't let people know that you're weak, let people understand you're making your own decisions. Like, this was like taught. I mean, through demonstration and even audibly, it was like, you don't need to tell that. You don't need to share that. So our family was very, very private growing up. And so I'm going to fast forward through a lot of even decades. I started my first company at 19. Everybody that follows this podcast has heard my story. But when I was 40 years old, I was headed to the office and ran over and killed a pedestrian. And it was a real pivotal moment in my life, but it was also devastating. It was a time in my life that it was very, very challenging because up until that point, I hadn't built the relationships with people like I have today. And I wasn't able to go and talk to people at great lengths and very deep in the conversation to let them know what I was struggling with. And I remember literally not coming out of my house for 3 days. Like I didn't go anywhere. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to be around anybody. Didn't want to talk about it. And not too terribly long after that, Robin and I had a significant challenge in our marriage. We won't get into today. It would take the whole episode up, but we had a major hiccup in our relationship. And coupled with going through that accident, I couldn't forgive myself. I was dealing with a lot of grief. And then my personality in itself is an addictive personality, and so I discovered that I needed some help. Like I didn't know what I needed, but I needed some help. And I went and found a guy named Floyd Dawson. He's in Hendersonville, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. And I attribute Floyd to saving my life, literally. I mean, the guy worked with me for months and even years, and now it's been decades. I go see Floyd when things are good. I go see Floyd when things are bad. I go see Floyd just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Robin and I go together. We go separate. Like we need somebody to flush these things out with.
You got the bat phone to Floyd, it sounds like.
Yeah, I do. I got him on speed dial, right? I need to get a retainer with him instead of each trip. Maybe I could save some money that way. But I need all kind of help. I'm a piece of work, so it takes a minute to figure me out. But during the course of that time, I'm going to fast forward just a little bit more. I was kind of in a semi-stable mindset. We had great traction in our business. We had great momentum and later sold the business, but we're not going to go back there today. It's not about the business, but I was in a better place emotionally and mentally. And a local businessman invited me to join his mastermind group. And I'd never heard of mastermind. I asked him again, I said, what did you call it? And he said, a mastermind group. And I said, well, that's a new term for me. What is that?
He had read Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, right? Not at that time. Yeah, not at that time. But it was just a new concept to me. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I attribute it to that mindset of I'm my own guy, right? I didn't need to go out and do the Napoleon Hill thing, right? I figured out on my own. I paid a lot of stupid tax. I can promise you over the years, if I had somebody in my corner, hadn't been so stubborn and bullheaded. But he invited me again to join the mastermind group. And so I went and I didn't want to go. I went to Robin and I said, hey, we both know this guy and he can get up in your face and he can really call you out. And like, I don't want to go. She said, why don't you just go try it? And so I did reluctantly, but I did and had to drive to Franklin. There were 10 guys and we met in this guy's office and we hung out and talked and I become more comfortable and they started sharing like real stuff. I thought it was going to be a facade. I thought, hey, these guys will never in a million years share things that are intimate and personal. And because I'd never been exposed to that. But one guy started talking about a marriage issue that he was having. And it was kind of interesting to me. It's like kind of reading the gossip column. It's like, oh, man, what is this going to be? And he started really diving into the details. And I was like, dang, this guy's coming out strong. A couple of weeks later, one of the guys had a son that was dealing with some substance abuse. And I was like, wow, he's just going to touch on that. But he didn't. He dove deep and said, we'd tried rehab places and been at home. And I was like, oh my gosh. I don't know how long it was, a few weeks later, excuse me. One of the guys started talking about cash flow issues in his business. And I was like, it's getting real now. We're talking about the money, right? Forget the family. This guy's talking about the money, and nobody talks about their money openly. And I came home, probably been meeting 3 months. And I said, Robin, I think I have found my people. And she said, what do you mean? I said, they're real. I mean, they're really discussing topics that you and I would discuss privately here, issues that we're having in our relationship or with our children or with cash flow issues. And so it was very intriguing to me. And so I would continue to go back week after week after week. And I won't walk you through the whole journey, but we spent the next 10 or 12 years, every single Wednesday morning for an hour and a half, we would sit around a conference table and we would do life together. And I just can't even begin to tell you how it changed my life in every regard. And it taught me the value of being vulnerable and transparent. And these guys are some of my best friends today, continue to be. And, now we've got, 25 years have lapsed since the beginning of that. But they're still very close friends. They're still guys I talk to. We don't meet any longer. But that's kind of the catalyst to how we started Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind.
Very cool. You had you mentioned something. We went on this ride just this week, actually, a few days ago, since we're recording this. But we went on this ride. He took me around, and one of the things that stood out to me especially the early, let's say before you got connected to a mastermind, right, or a peer advisory group, business owners group, community, whatever you want to call it.
Call it whatever you want, right?
The point was, you mentioned something that's I think really important, is that you found your people. And I think what it was is you found people you aligned with. So they were, guys that desired momentum. They obviously wanted accountability because they showed up, and they wanted momentum in all areas of their life. Because you talked about guys talking about their family, guys talking about their business, guys talking about, and I think that's important to recognize that, for every guy listening, there's a community that you need. And it's important to pay attention to how it aligns to what's important to you, right? Because there are different communities, different peer groups, different things that are aligned a certain way. And so being in alignment with that, finding that's really, really important. And so you found that where you felt comfortable. I also find it interesting that it wasn't like you showed up one week and everything was hunky dory. I mean, you specifically said,
no, man. No, it's
3 months in before you really felt like, okay.
Yeah, I didn't tell anything personally
for
3 months. I just sat there and to be very candid, I was struggling at the time. I mean, I had some real stuff that I was working through and I was afraid. And what I was afraid of is if I share what I'm really going through, they'll think less of me and they might even kick me out of the group. I actually thought that. There was nothing further from the truth. Once I got the courage to share, hey, Robin and I are going through this trial in our marriage, and here's what we're dealing with. Man, they embraced it. They gave me airtime. Week after week, they would help me. And here's the truth. Going through that accident, I couldn't forgive myself. It was like, could I have done something different? Should I have taken a different route? Could I have maneuvered the vehicle differently and not run? Like I couldn't, like that was somebody's father. It was somebody's husband. It was somebody's brother. And, I ran over him and I just couldn't get over that. And these guys embraced me. I mean, they took me in and they helped me and allowed me to talk it out. And I'm thinking now, even during this interview, what if I didn't have that group? How much longer would it have taken me to work through that? Would I have worked through it? Would there have been a different outcome? Would Robin and I still be together because we were dealing with such a hard issue in our relationship? Like, would I had the freedom to talk it out and then be a voice of reason that made me think differently? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? If I knew better, I would have done better. And if I hadn't had these guys, it was just directly the providence of God that got me with this group that helped me work through this devastating, traumatic experience of running over a pedestrian, working through the difficulties in our relationship. We don't have long enough on this episode, but I could go for years and tell you situations that I've been confronted with over the course of now decades of my life, that these people had context to my situation. They knew the way I think. They know the situations I've been in. They know my history, and they were able to give me good feedback. And I'm just so thankful today, looking back at how they helped me work through these traumatic experiences.
As we were driving around, you had, I mean, we probably could spend another 5 hours or 10 hours. I'm guessing there's just probably so much, and you remember so much. It's amazing. Like, honestly, I'm just like, how do you remember all those names? But you do. And so, or this place that's just crazy. So God's given you a gift that way. I do not possess that. But anyway, as we're driving around, you're saying, you're sharing all these things that, like, I bought this building and then I bought this one, then I sold this one, I bought this one, then I sold this one. And there's like a ton of activity. Like, you did probably, I mean, I don't even how to describe it, but again, you didn't even tell me everything. There's no time to share everything. But what you did share was there's a lot. And I asked you in the truck, I said, this was before you being in a group of guys that were able to have context and pour into you.
Right.
Now, you made those decisions of what you made earlier, and you lived life and you did well. But I asked you, do you think it would have been different? Like, all those different transactions, like jumping from one to the next for this or that, like, you actually said there really wasn't a strategy.
There wasn't. I was operating just in what I knew. And that's where the stupid tax came in, because I made so many bad decisions that probably took me months, if not years, to overcome. Strategically, there could have been a much different way. I've learned so much over the course of my career, but especially in the past 25 years, about the things not to do, the landmines that you can dodge as a result of the counsel of these other people that are aspirational. They have a lot of wisdom. They know something that I don't. They're able to share. And man, I can only imagine where I could be today had I had that sense of instruction and guidance and direction all along the way. And it's just incredible how, even as foolish as I was, that I did have a measure of success. But I wonder how much differently it could have been with the proper guidance.
So you talked about a key moment of isolation that you found yourself in. You went and you recognized that you needed some help professionally at one point. So you were essentially in community there. Like, I think this episode we've titled it like your journey through isolation, or something like that. And so as you're journeying through coming out of isolation, you've chosen to put yourself in a position where you're getting some counsel from an individual, and then it's somewhere along the way another kind of a key moment in your journey through isolation is that you get invited to be part of this group. Right. Were those, as you think back in life, were those like the key moments, were the only two key moments for you when it comes to, like, when you think about overall isolation for yourself?
Primarily around isolation, I would say yes. These guys gave me good instruction. The counselor, the therapist, helped me to work through some mindset issues that I was having. And I do want to point out there's a distinct difference in being in a peer advisory group and needing a professional therapist or counselor, right? Don't go to a mastermind hoping to get therapy and counseling in regards to professionals that can help you work through those things. They're trained, they're educated, they're experienced. There's a difference.
Okay, so let's just hang on just a second right there. So let's break that down a little bit more, because I feel like that's still a little vague.
Okay.
Like, what is the difference when you say professionals can handle things like that?
Yeah, well, they're experienced in knowing how I'm thinking, the grief that I'm going through, and helping you work out of the grief, going through some of the mindsets. There are chemical releases as it relates to different kinds of stress. And so you need someone with trained experience to help you work through underlying problematic areas in your life. There's certain things that went on in my life as a child there again, we don't have enough time today to talk about that. That was the real foundational piece for the way I look at a lot of things, right? And we need somebody with experience to be able to break that down. The masterminds, I see that these are like small business owners or decision makers, people that are really what we call family first, people that are interested in a lot of traction or momentum, people that are desiring accountability. You're aligning with similar core values. You've got similar worldviews. You found your people, right? These are people that can walk on the journey and help you accomplish those goals. That's differently than doing what a therapist would do or going to a counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist. There's different tactics that I think they use to help you work through those things to get you in a position to where you desire the momentum and you're desiring accountability. Because the way I was feeling, like I didn't want any momentum, like I didn't want to do anything, right? And I certainly didn't want accountability because I didn't want to share openly what it was that I was experiencing. Because if I did that, it would expose my inadequacy. And if I'm exposing that inadequacy, we both know what that creates, and that's shame in our life. And so getting to a good enough place to be able to function in a mastermind group, in a peer advisory group, is just a little different mindset. And so I didn't even know about the mastermind group at the time, but I knew I had some underlying issues that I had to work through. And that's where I went and got professional help.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like this is a really broad generalization of it, but I think I've been in masterminds for a long time, peer advisory groups myself, and so there are times when I've had to go seek counsel, being in a mastermind from a
Sure.
professional, and I think
Right.
I've encouraged other guys in our groups to do that as well, right? And sometimes guys come to apply to be in the mastermind, and we're like, "Whoa, well, time out! Like, you really need to go see a counselor first."
Sure.
And I think it's mostly around the idea of, I think you didn't use this word, but I think personally sometimes we can get to a place where we can't. And there's a difference between, if you think about momentum, like if I can't get momentum, whether it's in a relationship challenge or usually that's where most of those things evolve around, some type of relationship where we need the most help from professionals. From a counseling standpoint, but sometimes we can't. Like we need someone to help us sift through those layers, like you're talking about, and break that
Right.
down.
Right.
But then there's other times that we just need to know how, right? From a group of people around us that we're willing to do it, we want to do it, we just don't know how to move the needle on certain things, and we can learn from other people and get their insight and get their feedback, but we're able, a healthy, being part of a healthy group is that you're able to move forward, right? When you
Right.
can't, you need professional help. When
Right.
when you're able to,
Right.
you just need to know some tools and some ingredients and some help. That's
Right.
where that idea of the mastermind really kicks in and helps.
That's where we kick you in the hind end, get you going, right? You say, you know, fast forwarding just a little bit more, a few years after that, we started a construction company with another guy. Actually, it was an existing construction company I went in partners with. And we did that for 6 or 7 years. And then when I turned 50, which was almost 13 years ago, a couple of guys encouraged me to coach. They said, "You really should." I said, "I don't want anything to do with coaching. Like, I'm tired. I've been working since I was 8 years old, and here I'm 50." And I made a comment in that mastermind group when a guy asked me what I was going to do now. And I said, "Nothing." I said, "I'm going to go down to the Caribbean, probably St. John or St. Thomas, and I'm going to buy me a little bungalow down there. And I'm going to rock myself into an oblivion." And I thought I was saying something funny, but nobody in the group laughed. And I never forget, one of the guys sitting across the table looked at me and pointed that little short, stubby finger. And he said, "That's the most selfish thing I've ever heard you say." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Man, you're 50. Now you've got all this experience. You've got the ability to teach other men how to grow and how to prosper." And he made me feel terrible when he said that. And I went home and I told Robin what this gentleman had said. And she said, "What do you think about that?" And I said, I don't know. He's made me feel a little bit guilty, because now all I want to do is live a life of leisure. I want to go down there and do nothing. I don't want to take the wisdom or the experience that God's given me and poured into other people. And so another buddy invited me to join his coaching program, and I did. Met a couple of guys. We were talking about this the other day. Those two guys are still in ISI, Brett Barnhart, Matt Miller, the two guys that I met over a decade ago. Started coaching those guys. Coached one of them every week for 10 years now. It's crazy when you start thinking about how fast it goes by. But I started doing a few podcast interviews to share my journey, to try to coach other people. And we started getting a lot of response. And so I told Robin that can't coach that many people. I'm going to start a mastermind. So that was kind of the genesis of Iron Sharpens Iron, how it got started, and kind of where we're at today. But what's exciting is I was being equipped for a 10 or 12 year period, learning more about what masterminds are, learning the value, understanding what works, what doesn't work, understanding what's important to people, what's not important to people, and really focusing on those big nuggets, those things that we can really move the needle on, and hyper focusing on that and gaining a lot of traction. So it's really been fun through that experience. Wally, what's really fun though is that we're unique in nature. The things that we do in ISI are different than a lot of the masterminds do. A lot of masterminds are good if that's what people want. You get together, you hang out, what's on your mind. We've got a framework. We've established great tools. We use a platform that encourages men to be vulnerable and to be transparent. And you've helped create a lot of these tools and a lot of the processes that we go through. You probably would do a better job than I would at explaining kind of the framework. Why don't you tell the audience kind of what it looks like behind the curtain in one of these mastermind meetings?
Yeah, sure. So I'll run through some of the things that we've seen that have really helped. I'm going to be selfish for a minute, helped me as well as helped, a number of the guys that are in Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind, part of View from the Top. So it kind of all starts with, and we've been on this journey even ourselves. We've talked a little about this on other podcast episodes. This journey, the past 3 years, we had a good foundation. But we just read this book, The Bottom of the Pool, and we needed to we had created our own surface for ourselves, and we needed to go below the surface and get back down to the foundation and start rethinking and rebuilding some things. And so we started talking about core values, and we started talking about mission and vision and goals and what was important. And so over that period of time, the last 3 years, View from the Top's been on this kind of journey, as well as we invited all of our members to come along in their own way and with their own businesses. And so we created this, man, I don't even know what to call it sometimes, but I don't like to use the word program. It's a tool to equip yourself to think about the goals that you have, both, today, yes, but also a little bit into the future. And so everybody should have some aspirational goals. And so that could be 3, 5, 10 years down the road. There's some aspirational things. But then when you start breaking them down, what we called it was the come as you will be. So we shortened it up to CAYWB. It's funny how many people spell it wrong, but it is what we have. And it's worked really well for these guys to identify in the 5 pillars of their life. So I identified personally, spiritually, relationally, professionally, and financially. Just for my own self, I'll give you my experience. So when we started working on this, the idea was, when you're sitting, for us, our initial, when we started it was we were going to do a 3-year kind of vision casting, goal setting, to equip ourselves with. That's how we were going to do it. So that's how we did it for the first go around. We just did 3 years out. And the idea was that when you're sitting there, thinking of like December 31st, 2023, which is coming up, which is pretty cool. And when you're sitting there in the afternoon, it's New Year's Eve. So depending on where you live, maybe to paint this picturesque, maybe it's you're looking out the window, the front yard, and it's snowing and you see it coming down, or maybe you're sweltering in the heat. I don't know, wherever you are. But anyway, you're sitting there and you're thinking about the last 3 years of your life. What do you want to be able to say then? at that on December 31st, 2023, what do you want to be able to say about your life of where you're at in every area in all those 5 pillars? And so we essentially, whether we did it in bullet points or we kind of wrote it in story form, all the guys in ISI have created this "Come as You Will Be," and it's been so fun to have that document, have something written down. You know, they say you're 40% more likely just to achieve something by writing it down. So true. But to have that as something written for ourselves to look at, to uh, to measure ourselves by, to give us direction as we make our plans. As God gives us direction, we make our plans, and so we have kind of like that roadmap for ourselves. And then it also gives context to the other guys in our groups, and context in the sense of like what's important to you, right? If you've got these 5 areas of your life and you've identified 3 to 5 different things within those that are important to you over that period of time that you want to be able to say, it adds a ton of context to relationships, to counsel, to advice, to the way they challenge you. And so having that tool has been very, very helpful. And then along the way of having that "Come as You Will Be," and we revisit that, once a year, twice a year. That's the idea. That's what we should be doing. We revisit
It's just a roadmap.
Yeah.
Right. It's a roadmap. We keep our eyes exactly on what it is that we say that's important, and we can do the task to accomplish that. Guys hold you accountable weekly, monthly until you accomplish that goal. There's so many guys revised that because they underestimated what they could accomplish with that level of focus. And it is so fun to see guys go back and go, hey, we're a year and a half in. I've already nailed it. And here we've got an opportunity to even double down on that. And they get so excited when we're holding them accountable to accomplishing that thing they said was important. And the reason it's called "Come as You Will Be" is because we present it to the group in a manner that we've already accomplished it. We own it during the presentation. And so it makes it real when you stand up and go, hey, I'm standing here technically not 3 years later, but hey, I've authored this book and I've doubled my business and we've hired 2 new team players. Like, we've already done it, and you can see yourself in light of it. That's why it's called "Come as You Will Be."
That's really good. Thank you for giving that definition. It makes a lot more sense to everybody that doesn't know what that stands for. So thank you. Another one of the tools that we use is called the scorecard, and we developed that over the last few years, and it helps us to be able to not just look at the longer term, but help break it down into like quarterly, where it's called the Success and Significance Scorecard. And we use that tool to get us kind of a snapshot in time of there's some scoring mechanisms in each one of those categories. So personally, maybe it's weight, maybe it's journaling for you. Maybe it's, for me, it's been riding my mountain bike and starting to experience that type of adventure that I had never done before. And so different types of personal experiences that you want to achieve, wellness and health as well. And then, relationally, there's things with our spouses and our kids. And, if you're involved in any type of ministry, working with other people, anybody around you, extended family. We've had guys that made it a priority to mend relationships that have been broken for years and years and years. And to be able to see them focus on that and make that a priority and make that change has been pretty cool in their lives. Not all of them have gone as expected, honestly, right? But many of them have. And if they didn't make
Wally, what I love about that tool is that we're encompassing the whole man.
Yeah.
It's not just a singular focus. It's not just, oh yeah, let's go out and make all the money we can. And when you do it at the expense of your family, you still end up a loser. And it really helps you build guardrails and boundaries. And it helps you take note of every aspect of your life in those 5 key areas. And so we're a well-rounded individual. You know what's really cool is the wives have become our biggest advocate. They're like, man, there is no way you're getting out of there because you are such a different person. We're having such a great marriage now. You're a better dad as a result of being in there, because they're paying attention to the data. They're grading themselves. They're presenting themselves accountable to the group, and it makes you pay attention to every area. That's what's so exciting about being in here, is that every single area of your life rises. You do better because you're on this journey together. So that tool that you put together, has been amazing.
That's been so good. Gets feedback from the guys too. Yeah. I could go on and on. It's not that there's a whole bunch more. There is more. But we use these tools that we developed in here to really help guys move life forward as you're talking about. And it's been, I don't know. I feel like we could sit here and we're coming to the end of our recording time, but we could sit here and just tell story after story of, so many just successes, and not just successes, but a lot of guys that are in ISI have already found a measure of success. What they're looking for is significance. And
Right.
that's why we call it the success and significance scorecard. And because it's not just about how much more money can I make. While that's a key, that's a component of it. But it's, significance part is what I'm doing with the funds that I've been given, that I have now, and what am I doing with them forward? And that type of thinking, right? Challenging guys to think differently, not just I'm my own man kind of a thing,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're talking
It's
about
funny
it
you
again.
said, I'm glad you brought up significance, because that's what I was missing. We'd had a measure of success financially, but nobody cared but my family. I hadn't made an impact in anybody else's life outside of my immediate family, because I was so focused on me and my family. And God really revealed to me during that automobile accident, and then revealing it through the counselor, and then revealing it through the mastermind group that I was a part of, that my focus had been internal. It hadn't been looking outward. And I said, God, if you'll give me another chance, I'll devote the remainder of my life looking outward, being the giver and not just the taker. And that's what's been so amazing in ISI, is to see other people experience that. They start thinking about other components to their life besides just making money. Now, I don't want to discount that, because that's very important, and we need to make money. And the guys here do make a lot more money as they progress through the program. But I want you to think of this journey as all encompassing, making you a better man in every area of your life.
Yeah, that's good. But guys, we finished today's episode up. What's a couple of things that you'd be like, man, some guys could be listening to this and going, yeah, this is a sales pitch for ISI Mastermind. And in full disclosure, it's what we do every day. We live it. So we're really, truly, you could see it as a sales pitch, and maybe it's that, but I think it's more than that. I think it's sharing our experiences.
Yeah.
Whether it's ISI Mastermind or not, like what is your encouragement for guys listening today that find themselves in a situation that you've been in before, being isolated?
Yeah, I just want you to think through, do an evaluation of your personal life. Just sit up and take note and just say, where am I at? Do I have those trusted advisors? How would I see myself involved in a group like that? Because I think one of the greatest assets of being in a mastermind is the perspective that it offers. There's huge amounts of emotional support. There's validation. There's guys that are willing to offer constructive criticism along the way. There's things that we can accomplish when we're together far greater than going the journey alone. And so just think about how you would benefit in getting out of isolation by surrounding yourself with trusted advisors, that you're willing to subject yourself to them for your greater good. They don't have anything to gain or lose as a result of your increase, but they're people that do align with you in your core values. They are in alignment with the mission. They do see similar worldviews. And I can't begin to tell you how important it's been to me to have those diverse perspectives over this course of these past 25 years. And all the emotional support, I can't even imagine what it would have looked like going through that accident. And Wally, you know this, and a lot of the community knows this now. It's invaluable to me today during even this interview, because I'm going through a very difficult time in my life. And those that are around me understand this. I've got a daughter that's got an incurable liver disease. It's going to have a transplant. It's probably the most difficult thing. No, it is without a question the most difficult thing that my family has ever experienced. We've been going through this for 9 months now, and we're at a point in time where my youngest daughter needs a liver. I can't fathom going through this without the support that I've had hourly. I get a text message, I get a Facebook post, I get a phone call, I get an email, I get a handwritten card, I get things delivered to my house, and we got you, Big A. We're praying for you. We're here to support you. Man, listen, that alone, the emotional support that you get from being in a community is invaluable. But along with that, you get the shared wisdom, you get the accountability, you get the validation that I was talking about of the things that you're working on. I want you to really sit up today and take note. Is that me? Do I have those trusted advisors? And if not, I want to encourage you to explore what that looks like in your community, at your church, even in ISI Mastermind, if that's a good fit for you. Other masterminds, just get involved, get people around you, and I promise you, it'll take you to heights you've never been. It'll help you solve problems that you never thought possible. It'll give you a sense of encouragement like you've never experienced before. So think through that, because we want you to have that view from the top.
Hey, as we finish out today, you might be new here, or maybe you've listened through all the podcast episodes and you're coming up on a situation where you're like, oh man, I don't know what to do about that, or don't know what to do about this thing or that thing. I'd encourage you to look back through the previous episodes for topics that you need help with. Maybe you need a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of motivation. You just need to get your butt in gear. There's lots of great topics that we've covered so far over the last almost 50 episodes. We're coming up on a year. So we're excited about that. But you can do that on your favorite listening platform, just like you're listening here on the website or on Apple or Spotify or any of your favorite listening platforms. So please do that. And in addition to that, just as Big A called you out, you can always check out viewfromthetop.com. We have lots of resources there. You go to the resources tab. There's help there for the what do I want? It's a great question to ask yourself. If you don't know how to answer that, there's a guide there to help you with that. There's a spouse survey and some other resources as well. And I encourage you to check out the Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind. You can check that out just by going to viewfromthetop.com, and there's an ISI Mastermind link right at the top. So be sure to check that out, and we will see you next week.